Hey guys, what's going on? This is Adam Everett Miller with AETutsPlus.com, and today we're going to be looking at a few tips that will hopefully increase your workflow and help you keep your sanity as you take on rotoscoping projects. So we're going to talk about a few of them. Hopefully we don't take too long, just so in case nothing's new to you, I don't waste too much of your time, but let's go ahead and jump right in. I just recently got done with a project that I had to do a lot of rotoscoping. This is not a clip from that project, just for client reasons, but this was an older project that I had to rotoscope out. And this one specifically was just used as a transition for a DVD menu where the player literally just ran across the screen. Now in this instance, all I needed to do was just cut the player out. I didn't need to have him composited back in. I didn't have to line it up perfectly. And so the reason that I even make this distinction is as you're going to start doing roto work, there's little things like this little glare and reflection, this little guy hanging down, that in my case, that little extra guy to cut out inside there and to try to roto around that, it was going to be, that's a lot of extra work. And since I didn't need to drop him back into this scene just in the foreground of something else, maybe if there was a T-Rex or something on the field, I could just kind of cut that part out and the shot wasn't really affected at all. And it just saved me a little bit of time. So looking for little things that, of course, you don't want to cut everything out, like maybe these fingers up here might not be the best thing if that's kind of a key part. But if he's walking in front of, if he's going in front of something else that's going to be in that shot, you need to maintain more detail, because as soon as that thing is no longer in the background, well, then you're going to see through to the background, which will be that shot, in which case that's going to be there again. So I hope that makes sense a little bit, but knowing what your intent is on the front end can help you gauge a little bit how much detail you really need to spend. All right, well, let's jump right in. And first off, to kind of give a picture of one principle, well, let me do this. This is what I would often see with people who first time rotoscoping. They would kind of come in, they grab their pen tool, and all right, they'll trace around bad mask color, and then little things like this, they would just go and kill themselves. Well, I just talked about that, so let's just forget that, okay? And then they would trace around. I'm just going to kind of do a crappy job to save time here, but you can get the picture here that, let's say I had 3 or 4 times the amount of points, and all right, there we go, and bam, done. Oh, gorgeous, great looking cutout. Adam, you're so good at rotoscoping. Sweet. All right, well then I will come down here to my mask and I'll keyframe the path, and then I will move one frame ahead, and oh crap, okay. Well, now I need to back up to arrow, and I need to slightly adjust that, and I need to slightly adjust that, especially when I get a lot of detail and I'm going in here. This is how rotoscoping people go insane. Instead of doing this, well, first off, right now you're trying to paint a picture through sunglasses or through a peephole. Whenever you're doing work with masks, take it off. Like, don't have it set to any mode yet. You want to be able to see your line. Well, speaking of seeing your line, right now it's kind of weak. So what I would do is, if this was a whole body, I would label it. Hit enter just as if it was a layer and write whole body. Label your mask, and of course we'll change the color to something a little bit higher contrast, just so we can see it in contrast, or separated and removed from your picture. The other big thing that's happening right here is we're trying to attack this whole object with one path, and when there's just maybe 2 frames movement, what's going to happen is you're going to grab the whole mask path, and okay, hey, I know a little secret. I can kind of move it all at once. Well, that's great. So let's say we line it up on the back shoulder. Well, then that's going to mess up our front. Or okay, well, let's line it up in the front. By creating one long thing, I guess you're going to stress yourself out a little bit, because then you have so many more points to work on. And what I would tend to do is break it up a little bit. Let's get rid of this mask, and let's focus on just the knee for right now. And if you're used to Photoshop, there's the lasso tool, and there's the one that has like the little line next to it. Basically, you click, again, not a great mask color. I can change that right now, actually. Oops, and let's make it bright red. Okay. And if you're used to that lasso over in Photoshop, you're going to just click and click and click. And at least I came from Photoshop. If you're from Illustrator, maybe you're used to using a pen, but when you're able, try to use a little Bezier curve. Bezier, whatever, however you'd want to pronounce it. The fear is that you're going to run into this, and you're going to do a big curve, and then, oh man, that's super frustrating. And that is super frustrating. I totally hear you. But we'll address that here in a bit. Let's attack one section at a time. So we have that. I want to, instead of cutting, again, getting rid of that, instead of cutting out my whole football player, how about we cut away what's around the football player? And by doing this, well, number one, that means that I'm not gonna get this cluttered in here, because all my extra keyframes are going to be around the perimeter, and at no point should there shouldn't be any vertex points inside him, so I can see my subject well and just let all these extra guys hang out around the outside. But by breaking it up like this, I can focus on one section at a time, and it's going to help me keep my sanity, especially let's say that there's a lot of motion blur in one spot. Maybe I can feather that differently. And it also lets me just move quicker through that one spot. It allows me to see the progress as a whole. If I were to do everything at once, in 1 hour, I might only get 5 frames ahead. Whereas right now, in 1 hour, I can have my whole left leg done. And it's just, when you're working with a client, it allows you to say, oh, look, I got the left, this side of his body done, in however long it takes you, rather than just, oh, well, here's 5 frames that are awesome. But anyway, well, so the principle here, okay, let me go back and address this really quick. This is the fear, okay? So you don't want to use any curves, because then when you grab the handlebar, you do it, and you know that there's a way to, okay, so you're there. Basically, get it to where you like it on the bottom there. Hold down Alt or Option, and then you can fix it. And it might seem like an extra step, but it really isn't, because what might be an extra step of dragging handlebars, really I would have done 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 points around that knee in order to not make it look boxy. Whereas I was really able to use this. If you can practice and really get comfortable using the curves, it will benefit you long term, even though it might be a little more difficult on the front end. Okay, so we're here and we want to set a path. Well, then most people would do that, and then of course you shift forward one. Oh man, it's totally different. Okay, well then you would come back up here and you would grab your points. One key as far as and then there you go. You're not dealing with 1, 2, 3, 4 points again. You're just dealing with these 2, and you can adjust it accordingly. And once you do that once, it'll lock this other one. It'll realize, okay, you want this handlebar to be separate than the other handlebar. If you want to bring it back again, you can hold down Alt and it'll go back to where it was, or Option rather. But let's talk about just moving through as you do rotoscope. Again, this one, the legs are moving very, very quickly, so this might not be the best example, but from one frame to the next, that can be a difficult way to work. Here, it's kind of appropriate because every frame is going to be largely different. But, oh, and also, yeah, when you're here, make sure to label. So right here, I would be, top of legs. And then you can give it to whatever color you want. If you want to alternate colors as you do multiple masks, and then we'll do another mask here, for maybe around the helmet. Again, yeah, I would want to bring it in closer and actually use the curve, but you can focus on just the top of the helmet, and you would label that as such, top of helmet. If you don't have you might need to go up to preferences and go to appearance, and then have it check the cycle mask colors. If that's not on, then every mask color will be the exact same. But again, the idea here is you want to have that high contrast. So maybe here I would go like bright blue, well, that's blue and blue. Whatever, you'd use a different color. But as far as movement goes, this is a big one that really changed the way that I work. It's just a simple principle, and maybe you guys already do it, but let me get rid of both of my masks that I have here. Get familiar with the hotkeys. G to pen, and if you hit G a couple times, it'll rotate through. Adding vertex to a line, getting rid of one, and then the convert vertex if you have a path, and let's say it's rounded here, and there you go. Well, if you want to change this to square again, you hit G a couple times, and eventually you're going to get to this convert vertex, which if you just click it once, it'll square it out. But anyway, getting rid of that. Get familiar with moving back and forth between pen and V arrow, because you're going to want to use the arrow to adjust the points, whereas you use the pen to create the points. Okay, so I have my one here, and I will just create a really quick roto around the leg. While you're creating your point, if you hit space, you can actually drag it around a little bit. Okay, we're there, and okay, again, it did that little thing I'm not going to want it to do, but that's okay. We'll deal with it in a second. And I, have my point. Okay, change it to none. Go V, grab it. Top is good. Got my top good. Hit Alt, bring it there. Bring this one down like that. Okay, and I'm content. All right. So instead of moving it keyframe by keyframe, we hit M to bring up mask. Instead of going down here to the timeline and scrubbing like that, every time you get off your mask and come down here, you're all going to be wasting time. So really get familiar with just page up, page down. Just get comfortable using that, especially as you're going to want to be going between frames a lot. Page down to move to the next frame. In this one, again, it might not be the best example because the amount of movement might actually be a better example if I was to be up on the helmet, just because the legs are going to move a lot, whereas the helmet's not going to move quite as much. But once you set one keyframe, instead of going and moving one keyframe ahead and altering, hit Shift page down. That's going to move you 10 frames ahead. And then what you can do is adjust at that point. And this is going to have the time or the motion kind of work in your favor, so that the natural tween between these two keyframes is going to set you up pretty well. Again, here I'll grab it, and I'm going to want to round that one off and round that off. All right. And I would want to maybe create some additional detail here. So again, going back to G, if I hover right over it, it'll create an extra point. Don't get crazy creating extra points. Unless you really need to. And the reason for that is that the more points you create, the more babies you're going to have to drag along as you go to adjust things. If you can keep it simple, keep it simple. Again, it's however much detail you need for your end result. But now that I've done this, this isn't the best example. I should have used the head. Let me just do that really fast. Grab a nice one here, go around. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm creating a shape. Make sure your clip is selected. Grab a point, and I just want to just solo the edge of the helmet here, okay? And I want to cut out instead of soloing him, okay? So set to none, hit M to bring up your mask path, good. Page down, shift page down, and then I can move it into place. And you can grab clusters of keyframes, of course, and move them. But this will be a better example. Now, instead of just moving one and then adjusting it slightly, now I don't have to move it quite dramatically as much. If I am here and I hit another shift page down, grab mask path as a whole, and I bring it over, then I can do this again. Then I'll just do it one more time here, and I will move it over again. Obviously, the point here is that naturally between frames, it's going to move with it. So then if I go at 5 frames between and I fix it, there's a chance that it might line up. I don't have to sit there and tweak each time, especially with stuff like this. I wouldn't have this option if I had a big, one big long guy. I would have to sit there and re-grab those individual points. But since I'm just dealing with this one cluster at a time, or this, this one amount here, I can very, very quickly go through and let's maybe skip one, and then it might line up just right. Then again, it might not, but this will save a lot of time in the long run. Let's see, what other points? Don't cut out the image every 10 frames. You use a curve when available, but then also, yeah, really, it's key to label, because as you're getting tons of different masks, we want to say top of helmet. As we get a bunch of different masks going on, you're going to want to know which is which. I mean, you can of course just select them and they're going to look different, but you can tell that's not selected, and then I grab it. But especially this movement thing, this is the one that I probably use the most as far as skip ahead. I'm not down here just killing myself in the beginning, but no, I've actually have at least a rough movement all the way through as the client watches. They're going to feel better at least. Oh, okay, cool. I see that the head's cut out, rather than, okay, cool, there was 4 frames. So there are probably plenty of other things that are way more helpful. I know that a lot of people use Mocha for rotoscoping, because you can kind of almost track and then have a shape there. I would love to hear any additional tips that you use that are kind of always on your mind. A big one for me is just make sure you keep the left hand on your keyboard for hotkeys. If the more you move the mouse, more you move your arrow, the more time you are going to waste. You just got to get comfortable using that left hand, and then also let time kind of work for you here, as the tween will kind of carry itself a little bit and roughly put your mask in the right place. So, and don't ever delete points if you're there, or if you're there, and if I were to go through and delete that, it's gonna warn you, but that's a very rookie mistake that would be quite a shame if you get really far. And then also don't forget to actually set a keyframe. I can't tell you how many times I've done a nice roto, and then I move forward a couple frames, and I move it and do forward a couple frames, move it, and then I go back and I realize I hadn't even clicked the stopwatch yet. So whatever, that's not a tip. That's just it's going to happen to you at some point, and I'm sorry for the day that it does. So anyway, this is Adam Evermiller. Hopefully there's something that's remotely useful for you. Just, it's on my mind, and I also would love to learn from you. I haven't done a ton of roto work, but it's something that I just did recently, and so it was on my mind again. But if you have something that has helped you out, I would love to have any extra advice come along. Obviously, there's RotoBrush as well, but that's a totally different subject. I tend to avoid RotoBrush. It's good, but this is more of a sniper rifle, whereas a RotoBrush is more of like a grenade. It just, it does a lot more damage, and it's hard to control and maintain after you've tossed it. Whereas here, I feel like I have a lot more control, and it's more precise as I move each line. So, yeah, well, that's it. My name is Adam Evermiller with AETestPlus.com, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.